What happens when you are so deeply scarred that your scars control your heart, your mind, your outlook, your behavior? Today, it's emotional scars. How many do you have? How do you get rid of them? And what exactly is the benefit of a scar? Hey guys, this is Barry with Father Seekers, and this is the podcast Teach Me to Father. Thanks for joining today. We are back with my friend, my brother, my counselor, and one of my favorite barbecue guys in all the world, Pastor Kelly Rhodes from Lebanon, Missouri.
Glad to be with you guys.
Pastor of Life Point Church and is an influencer in his community. Long family history of ministry, of community influence, not only in the religious aspect, but also in the political aspect, as well as an influencer in the city. Your dad, this is one of the most intriguing things that I know about you. The story you tell about your dad when he was mayor of Lebanon.
Commissioner of the county.
Commissioner of the county. The story you told me about his first few days in office.
About the ice storm?
Yeah, the ice storm.
Yeah.
That's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. I've had a chance to talk to your father some, and I think he's got a great deal of creativity, I think, that passed on to you, like where I'm from, we would call it good old boy wisdom.
Absolutely.
Like just a smart, sharp guy.
Yeah.
He was quite an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that entrepreneurial spirit, because I think there are some guys who have an entrepreneurial spirit, but they don't know how to jumpstart it because they didn't have a dad to help them.
Yeah.
Tell me about his.
You know, we, like I said earlier, I think the last podcast, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My great-grandfather had a stucco business that went all over the region in the early, 1900s and, before World War I. But then when my grandfather got back from World War II, he did not go right into ministry. He picked that business up, and if you have a stucco house, around Springfield or Ava, Mansfield, Missouri, that there's a good chance that my family did put the stucco on it.
Oh,
it was put in that time.
That is incredible.
It was just something that was natural to be in them. There was a natural drive for that. My father picked it up. I mean, as far back as when he was a little kid, they would, he would raise livestock. And when he was, I think, 12 years old or 14 years old, he had a hay truck, and he would go around and he would cut and bale hay. And he had grown men working for him, had a full payroll before he could even drive.
Yeah.
And a part of that was my grandfather, saw this spirit within him, and he nurtured it. He provided, some support for that, but also taught my dad very early, business has to be profitable. So this is what profit and loss looks like.
Yeah.
So he absolutely guided him and coached him through all of that. And it's because that was what his father did for him. And then when they started the church, when they started the church at 4th and Jefferson here in Lebanon, it wasn't just from scratch. There were actually 2 pastors that had been here and then had left, and one of them left in a very scandalous way. And so he didn't just start the church from scratch. He actually started it in a hole, because back in the 50s, that scandal around the church was much bigger than it is today. But he started that just by building relationships and doing odd jobs here and there, whatever is necessary to make it work, make it happen. And he kind of demonstrated, there's a, I don't know if it's an actual word, but that stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
That is necessary for entrepreneurship. He demonstrated that to my father. My dad saw that, and then whenever he, again, was a teenager, and whenever he was, a young adult, he did have a job for the state of Missouri for a time, but it was always the side gigs. And eventually he owned a music store and a sound company, and it was that persistence that kind of defines an entrepreneurial spirit. That was something that it was modeled for him in a big way.
So I wanted you to tell that story because I think that and by the way, if you didn't hear the last podcast, you should go back and listen to that about the silent battles that we as fatherless guys face, and just men in general. But there's something about learning entrepreneurship, because actually the more I delve into fatherhood and try to learn it, because I'm still learning, and it's really an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah.
Like even if you work for a company or for another organization, you don't work for yourself. Fatherhood is entrepreneurial. Like you got to make the ends meet. And I don't want to sidetrack on this, but a lot of guys get stuck. They die at 30 and are buried at 75 because they're in a dead end job. And I want them to, I wanted you to tell your story so that it could communicate to them that your work right now is it's part of your entrepreneurial endeavor to create income from your family. If you need, expand your horizons, think more about expanding your horizons to find other streams of income, not just to feel like you're dead. Yep. And I don't know. That's for somebody. I don't know who it is. Emotional scars. Here's the first question.
Okay.
Deep-seated feelings. These are 5 of the top listings for emotional scars that fatherless men bear. Deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and low self-worth. We talked about inadequacy in the last podcast, but this emotional scars piece has to do with low self-worth. How did we get to the low self-worth piece, and what do we do to reverse the curse on that?
And when it comes to that low self-worth piece, there's so many different ways that can come to us. Sometimes it's because of something we were deprived. You know, many of us, that's a father that wasn't present, be there through actual fatherlessness or through abandonment or through, you know, someone who just, you know, like it was said last time, their name's on the deed, but they're never home. That can be one thing that kind of attach that to us. I think the big thing though is that we have to be aware of it so we can start to deal with it. Like we can't just deny that we've got the problem.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of guys get stuck. I think it's also why, just alluding to what you're just talking about, I think it's one of the reasons why people die at 30, get buried at 75. They don't realize that God has something more for them than just that place where they're stuck. And so it's comfortable to be stuck in that place, even though they don't enjoy it.
Clarify for me the difference between a healthy self-worth and the far other end of the spectrum, narcissistic, arrogant.
We love to throw that word around these days.
Yeah.
Narcissist, yeah.
I hear the narcissistic word a lot, and I even, some communications I receive, it's definitely misused.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to the middle and talk about what's a healthy self-worth, not off skew and out of balance.
I think a healthy self-worth is walking with what I like to call confident humility.
Come on.
You know, it's this ability, the ability to hold yourself with confidence. I have a voice. I have worth. I have value here, but not with having to walk around with this idea that I'm better than everyone else, you know, or that my ideas are somehow better than everyone else. The problem with narcissists is they get to this place where they just can't grow because you're eventually going to find somebody who has outpaced you in some way.
Yeah.
And when they find that person, they're smacked up against the wall and there's nowhere else to go. They have to shatter. And that's what often happens with narcissists. They just fall apart.
Oh, so now we're back to identity. Let's talk about if you find yourself in that place, if those of us who are listening find ourselves in that place, we talked about Christ being the perfect son. Okay. So how do I transition from what you just described in some form or fashion to finding my identity in Christ so that I can begin that process of having a relationship with the ultimate perfect Father? How do I go about that?
I think the gospel is the perfect vehicle for us to have this discussion. The gospel is is dealing with the truth of I have messed up so badly that there's no way I can fix myself.
Oh,
But someone loves me so much that they pay the ultimate price
Come
so
on.
they could.
yeah.
You know, and when you realize that the total brokenness that we experience because of sin in this world, and then you look at the way God views us, the way God sees us. One of the things that I learned this from Dr. Larry Fine whenever I was in my undergrad. One of the things I tell people all the time, go to the book of Ephesians specifically, and start to just go slowly through it. Don't read fast, go slowly through it, and just highlight the promises. I always tell people to use a green highlighter just because so many people use yellow, but something that's going to set it out and set it apart. And for the first 3 chapters of that book, you're going to find so many different ways that you see that God views you. He calls us his chosen ones. He calls us his workmanship or masterpiece, depending on the version that you read. You begin to see over and over how God views us.
Ooh.
Once you can begin to see how God views us, regardless of the pain that we've brought into this world, regardless of our failure, but how he views us, it changes things. Back when we lived in Kansas City, we had just had Ryder. We were dirt poor. And I was taking the dog for a walk, and this neighbor had cleaned out the house, and they were throwing a bunch of stuff away, but I saw a bunch of this plastic play school equipment laying by the side of the road. And so my mind said, hey, I'm going to go get that and take it home for my kid. And so as I walk over there, I'm just kind of looking and seeing what they have in this pile of trash to be picked up and thrown out. And in this shoebox, I find a baseball. And I look at this baseball, and there's writing all over it. It's old. And it says 1957 Chicago White Sox.
Come on.
And it has signatures all over it. Among those signatures is Nellie Fox.
Stop.
Nellie Fox, Hall of Famer, one of the greats to ever play the game. And this baseball was cherished by somebody because it's been preserved since 1957. But somebody else saw that baseball as just trash. And they just threw it in a box with a whole bunch of other trash. I'm talking, he was in there with like a corn dog wrapper from Sonic, and, you know.
Did you sell the baseball?
No, I didn't sell the baseball. I took the baseball, and that day I took it to a card shop, and the guy said, I'll give you $400 for it.
Hello.
And I knew if it was worth $400 to him at that moment, it was probably worth a whole lot more.
Oh my gosh.
And to me, it's worth, I still have it. It's in my office. It's priceless. And I use that as a way to say, you know, what somebody else saw as trash and as junk, somebody else said, man, that's got some value.
Yep.
And that's why God sees us. We often pick up that label and we hold on to that label that someone has placed on us as not being good enough or not being adequate or whatever. God sees us and he says, you're worth my son.
For me, I constantly find myself under a microscope of which I am the observer and the observed element. So as you were speaking, I got that picture of the microscope, and that is a very introverted, closed loop death trap that we find ourselves in when we're just observing ourselves. Wow, that's revolutionary for me. Just that. Here's the next one.
Okay.
This is right down your alley. I've heard you talk about this a lot, especially the unresolved grief part. Yeah, fathers grieve a lot. They just don't know what they're doing when they're grieving, right? Here's the next element of emotional scarring for a fatherless father: chronic emotional pain and unresolved grief. Link those for us, and when emotions surface regarding our father's absence, what did not happen, what should have, would have, could have happened, how do we address them helpfully to move forward with the caveat of grieving our emotional chronic pain? That's a lot.
That's a lot. It's a lot. I think grief is one of those things that we just aren't ready for, but we don't have a choice about whether or not we're going to deal with grief in life. Grief is a fact. if you've ever loved something or wanted something and then lost it or lost the opportunity to have it, you're going to deal with grief. And grief hits at different levels at different times of your life for different reasons. And oddly enough, grief doesn't necessarily get easier as you age. In fact, it seems like you have more to grieve over time. And so, dealing with this issue, let's just talk about this. My counselor has told me, and as I've done my own work on this, as I've worked with other people through this, grief is simply sadness and anger on a loop until it resolves. That's what grief is. The problem with us is that we try to avoid it so much that we don't let it resolve.
Sadness and anger on a loop.
Yeah. Until it resolves.
It doesn't resolve. It can resolve.
It can resolve, but it's worked so that it does resolve. And the reason why I say that it can resolve is because you really have to go through the process. You can find freedom. Now, here's the reality is that, particularly if it's something that you've loved, if you think about a loved one or a friend that just meant everything to you, your grief is not over when the pain is gone, because the pain is proof of that love. So that's not something you want to lose altogether anyway.
Say that again about the pain is proof of the love.
The pain is proof of that love. That grief is the price you pay for love.
Ooh.
And so not all grief is bad. Like when I think about my grandfather, he was my hero, man.
Right.
I live in his house. We bought his place. I live in his house today.
Right.
I don't want to forget him. And so it is right that it hurts a little bit when I miss him. However, I'm not controlled by my grief anymore because I've learned how to cherish him. Instead of turning that into a despondency and a depression, I've learned how to say, thank you, Lord, that I had this man in my life. God, thank you that I got to spend all these years with my hero and he downloaded into me. God, thank you for that. I pray and I've turned that around. But it took me a long time to get there. There's two big issues, I think, when it comes to grief, is that we hate the pain so much that we avoid it. And what does that do in our physical bodies? If you have a splinter or something gets stuck in your arm and it hurts to work to get that foreign object out. Well, if you leave it in there, it will infect and it will cause more damage as it moves around. And that infection will spread to healthy tissue. It will eventually work itself out, but it's going to cause the skin to burst again when it does. However, if you endure the pain in the initial process of pulling it out and treating the wound, then you're still going to have a scar, but it doesn't have to last as long as it does.
So stop avoiding.
Stop avoiding and start dealing. Yeah. It's one of the things I think it's important. Find a counselor. I recommend you find a Christian counselor, someone who has faith that can lead you through the word. I'm not talking about someone who just says pray a little bit more and just have faith and get through it. I'm talking about someone who has faith that's also a counselor, and ask them to help you walk through that stuff and be real with them. For me, one of the most powerful tools we have in this is journaling. I know a lot of guys don't want to journal, but there is something powerful about verbally processing and processing in the written word the pain that we go through.
Yes.
About choosing specific words of meaning, choosing specific words that describe what's going on inside of us and getting in touch with that. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, especially for us men. But if we don't deal with it, it will persist, and the pain persists and continues on.
Okay, so I have to grieve to investigate and interrogate what is in the cavity, in my father hunger cavity.
Yeah.
I have to do that. Okay. All right. Here we go. The other one. These are all deep holes. Like these
Can I
are
add one more to that.
Yeah.
Interrogate.
Yeah.
Let's investigate, interrogate, and release.
Oh, come on.
We define a problem. We understand a problem. Eventually, we want to let go of that thing. Eventually, we need to say, this is not what I'm going to strap my identity to. This is something I went through. But my identity should not be formed in what I went through. My identity should be formed in what I've overcome.
And who I hope to be.
And who I hope to be. Which, back to the scripture, we are more than conquerors
through
Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's not, if I see myself as I'm the one who was abandoned, I'm going to see myself as unworthy or worthless. Or I'm going to have that negative wound that always attacks my soul. But if I can begin to see myself as the prize that Christ died for, if I can begin to see myself as the one who went through this pain and overcame on the other side because of what he has done for me, that's it. That flips the script.
That's a whole different lens for grieving.
Yeah.
Oh. So a lot of guys I talk to and coach, they say, don't Bible thump me. But I'm sitting here listening to you today, and you brought such a practical application of the gospel. It's like, and we don't have to go far on streaming and media and YouTube to find foolishness, which contrives this evil, wicked thing about the gospel. As I'm sitting here thinking about this whole fatherless picture, and you've said 100 times to me about the prodigal son, we're all fatherless fathers or prodigal sons.
Yeah.
In a sense of the word, maybe in the biblical sense, but this could be the best application of the gospel to said person. Is this is the total redefinition of fatherhood that you've been looking for.
Absolutely.
Like to frame it up.
Yeah.
We've said it 100 times. This could be another podcast. All right, here's another one that I'm sure that I find myself in. The third element of the emotional scars piece is struggles with anger and emotional regulation. When I feel anger rising, and whether I have control or not, my first instinct is to either lash out or withdraw. Most of the time, those are the two that I encounter personally with other guys.
Yeah.
Or withdrawing would mean cave dwell for days on end.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not sure I understand. I understand the struggles with anger. I'm a professional at that. But I don't understand emotional regulation. I don't know how to do that. You know that. There's no secret. Talk to us about that.
This is one of the things I think, and I talk with a lot of people about this, you can't approach emotional regulation through an emotional process.
Oh, that's golden.
You have to start to think logically about what emotions you're feeling so you can figure that out. Anger particularly is the classic offender in this, because most of our anger per se is a secondary emotion. I'm not really angry. I'm embarrassed.
Oh.
I'm not really angry. I'm confused. I'm not really angry. It's a plethora of other issues that are more personal to deal with, that are more complex, that can sometimes leave me feeling disempowered. And so I will choose anger as the expression because I know what to do when I'm angry. I can get loud and I can bang on stuff, and that's how you fix your car most of the time. But for us emotionally, particularly when it deals with the relationships, the way to approach that is to not stay in our emotional capacity of I'm aware of my anger. This is what I'm going to do in my anger and hulk out on something. The way to approach that is to look at it logically and say, okay, what is the original offense that anger is being expressed as?
Ooh.
And so that takes us from the emotional side of our mind and into the logical side of our mind, which those two options very rarely ever coexist. And so we can begin to think about the situation and ourselves almost as a third party so that we can begin to have some we can make some real headway in not only identifying what it is that's going on, but what caused that and what could alternate approaches be. And when you start thinking logically about the emotions that you feel, you find yourself having an astonishing level of control over them.
So we can control anger.
We can if we take the time to investigate it and deep dive into it. Yeah, not just anger, lust. A lot of times people have that lustful drive. Let's be honest, it's lonely. You're not just looking for that image to have this fake encounter with. You're looking for a deeper issue that's going on. And so you can start to explore what's really happening.
Hit on that for the porn guys. There's a lot of porn guys that listen. You told me one time that we were having a discussion about this anger thing and our history together with Journey and all the coaching things that we used to do respectively. And you said something to me intriguing. I don't want to throw it out there because I will misquote it and then you'll have to clean it up. But to the effect, it was most guys don't look at porn for the sake of sexual satisfaction. They do it for distraction or to soothe something else. I know I'll probably mess that up. Can you correct me on that and then talk about that? Because I think anger's associated. I think a lot of us escape a lot of times with porn.
That's what it is. It's escapism. It's someone has not found value in me. Someone has not treated me with the respect that I feel I deserve. And so we will pursue these images on a screen. In the fantasy of our mind, they want us at that level. They are willing to do these things to bring us this level of happiness, which lets us believe, if only for a moment, that maybe we have that kind of value in somebody's eyes.
So virtual acceptance, you're saying?
It's virtual acceptance, but it's a fraud. It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's derived from treating someone else as an object, which honestly tears us down inside even more.
And that's what we're doing to ourselves and to another person.
Yeah.
Here's the next one. This is the big one.
Okay.
All right. Difficulty trusting others and forming secure attachments.
Wow.
Go. No question with that one.
This one's tough. It's tough for me, just to be honest with you. For some people, it's really easy to just go out and trust. And usually that person hasn't been burned too much. But when you've been burned, it's pretty tough. It's fear. It's fear that I'm going to get burned again. Fear that somehow I'm not going to live up to their expectation or whatever it might be. And that living in that bubble of fear keeps us isolated and protected. But also it keeps us alone. It's a risk to go into any depth of relationship with somebody. It's a risk to have intimacy. But when you think about the benefits of intimacy, I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about someone knowing you and someone knowing me. We have an intimate friendship. You know things about me. I know things about you. And that's why I cherish the relationship.
Yep. Right.
But you can't get there to that place that God created us for without the risk. It's the fear that keeps us from it. And so we have to be willing to put ourselves out there. We have to be willing to be hurt. And we have to be willing to realize that we could fail somebody in that way too.
Yeah. So you just struck a chord with, I think we create ill-equipped emotional kids.
Yeah. For sure.
Because we're not emotionally healthy because we don't understand intimacy. So again, we're driven back to perfect son, perfect father, my relationship with perfect son, have access to the perfect father so that I can be God's representation to my children, the actual physical. And I think that's where we're a lot like Jesus, where we pattern our lives after Jesus and live in accordance with his rule and reign so that we can be that exact human representation to our kids that's flawed and not faultless, but there's an intimacy factor, I think, in the flawing and the faultiness.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't understand that until I started going through my whole healing process 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And sitting with you, like we sat here in Lebanon for a week trying to figure that stuff out. Okay, so yeah, that pesky trusting others and forming secure attachments. Talk for a minute about how to break from insecure, unhealthy attachments. How do we break that connection?
I think you first have to identify if you have one. What does that look like? How do you identify that? And I think when it comes to that, again, this is another adage from the Bible. We look at the fruit. Well, what is this attachment producing in me? And then the other aspect of that is, what am I contributing to the fruit that produces, or to this attachment that produces that fruit? It very well may be that you have somebody in your life that would be a tremendous benefit for you in health and can help you get where you need to be. But you focus so strongly on them and what they're doing that you don't take the steps that you need to do. And so it's not that they failed you, but you failed you because you didn't follow through. Does that make sense?
It does. It certainly does.
And I think that's one of those areas. The unhealthy attachment is not always the fault of the person that we want to have the attachment with, the spiritual father or spiritual mother, mentor, whatever. Sometimes it's us not really fully walking in the light that they give us. So but we also need to occasionally examine that light. I had a mentor, love the man still to this day, and I kind of blindly followed some of his advice. And then when it didn't work out, I was like, well, what's going on? Well, when I kind of investigated a little bit more, I realized, this guy's never done what he's asking me to do. He doesn't really, what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And so there probably should have been a little less naivety on my part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any animosity towards him at all, but I kind of follow blindly in that. And so there wasn't unhealth there because I didn't use the wisdom God gave me to walk with either, And so I think we have to identify, is this a healthy attachment? Is it not a healthy attachment? And by the fruit that we see it producing. And then the issue with trust is a beautiful thing. It's something I like to tell the people that I work with. We've all been sold a big lie about trust, and it's that you can earn it. You cannot earn trust.
You got to unpack that.
If you could earn trust, everybody would trust Jesus, right?
Bomb drop. That's nuclear.
Trust is something that must be given. It must be engendered. But you can't make somebody trust you. In fact, there are people in your life that you've had in your life in the past that no matter what they did, because of what had happened before, you won't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us have somebody like that. No matter what they did, we might be that for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Trust is something you can't earn. It's something that you must give to another. And one thing that I can tell you is that if you are unwilling to give your trust to others, they are unwilling to give trust to you.
I'm frozen on a moment here. So earning trust.
Mm-hmm.
So anything in the kingdom, there's nothing in the kingdom that can be earned. In the kingdom of God that can be earned. It must be given.
Right.
I'm thinking now. Therefore, all the kingdom rules apply.
Mm-hmm.
Trust.
Yeah.
Forgiveness.
All of it.
Trust in God. Belief. He directs my path. He's directed my path to this person. Don't be a doormat, but be wise. So there's all those plays. Okay. This defrocks the whole distrust agenda out there right now. The whole mantra of it must be earned.
Absolutely.
There's nothing that can be earned in the kingdom.
Right.
It's given and stewarded.
If you go back to the fall, that sin didn't happen because the apple or the fruit was so shiny. It's because ultimately Eve said, I don't trust what God had to say.
Oh.
And God had done everything to engender that trust. He'd done everything you could think of to earn it.
We have to do a podcast, a series. We have to do a suite of podcasts on the garden.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, here's the coup de grace.
Okay.
This is where your genius and your expertise comes in to tie all of this together, this podcast. And I think you've been one of the key influencers in my life on dealing with this fifth element of emotional scarring. This could be the perpetuator of all.
Okay.
Persistent shame and fear of rejection. Go.
Persistent shame and fear of rejection. And this is where I believe we have to bring the spiritual side into this. We contribute a lot to our staying in persistent shame, and we contribute a lot to our own fear of rejection.
How?
We tend to try to nurse those failures again and again. We replay that stuff in our mind. And sometimes we replay it because we've been given a false narrative for ourselves. And sometimes that narrative is, well, it's clearly your fault. Sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be honest. Sometimes it is. But there's a lot of times that it's not. Particularly if you grow up with an abuser in your life as a child. When we think about, and if you want to dive deep, we're going to dive deep.
Yes.
When you think about the life that you live, the way children perceive the world, ages 2 to 6, 3 to 5, whatever. Every one of those kids thinks the world revolves around them. And they know that because when they cry, the whole world runs to them.
Yeah.
When they need something to happen, the whole world runs to them. That's the way it should be. Children need that type of nurturance. The backside of that is because of that, the stage of thinking and stage that I think it's concrete operational. I could be wrong on that. I'm off on my Piaget. But the backside of that is if the world revolves around you and you get help whenever you cry out, and so your help revolves around you, the hurting that happens in your life is also your fault.
Yes,
and so whenever you have to deal with abandonment, your parents didn't divorce because they couldn't get together. In your mind as a child, even if you never say it, they divorced because you did something that drove one of them away. If you were abused by someone, physically, sexually, emotionally, whatever, it didn't happen because they were off as the more mature person than the child. In your mind, you write a script that says, this happened because I obviously initiated this, or I obviously caused this to happen. And then that script ends up playing itself out in many different ways throughout your life because it's an underlying script. Or maybe you think about it this way. You think about the score of a movie, those beats that hold the whole thing together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the orchestra that you're hearing that holds the whole thing together. It's that underlying thump, thump, thump that keeps everything together. So you live your life with this script that says, this is my fault. And you hear the bad things are my fault. That's wild.
Keyword.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, it's hard for us to believe the good things are our fault. And so whenever I say that this issue of shame is we keep playing this over with this bad script, this is my fault, thump, thump. And you begin to see this string of failures in your life. This is my fault. Now, some of it might be your fault as far as you persisted in this pattern and only you can stop it. But a lot of times we're given this script, this thing that happens that we perceive with an undeveloped childlike mind, and it lays the foundation for the way we see everything in our future. We have to address that. We've got to get down and we got to deal with that issue. Did this thing that happened to you, was it really the product of a 4-year-old and their ability to think and reason, or was this something else? And how can we tell ourselves the truth about the situation that has shaded everything that you've thought and perceived and understood about the world from that point on?
So are you saying that first things first, I've got to scale my arrested development to be able to look healthily at this? Not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just thinking about me right now, selfishly.
I think we have to be able to look at it maturely, address it honestly, and correct the thinking that is faulty. For instance, that the whole situation, and I'm going to go back because it's what I've been talking about, and because it is such a common story for us. This whole situation of this bad thing that happened in my life is my fault because I did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're a child, there is no way you had the ability to make a parent leave.
That's really good. It's good.
They're an adult. they're in full possession of their faculties, or they should be. You're a child. But in your thinking and your understanding that the world revolves around you, you will see yourself as having that power, and you will remember yourself as having that power. You have to go back. You have to sit with that. And I'm uncomfortable with these words a little bit because it sounds a little bit flaky. But the reality is you have to sit with that 4 or 5-year-old version of you.
Yeah.
And be able to comfort them and say, hey, this happened, but it wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
This didn't happen because you're a bad kid, or this didn't happen because you somehow failed them. That adult made a choice. And sometimes it wasn't a choice. Sometimes I've got family that lost their dad at an early age, not because he wanted to leave them, but because of an auto accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter of God trying to punish them, but one day they'll have to deal with the reality of that pain, is that their dad didn't leave because God was trying to prove a point or teach them a lesson. It was something that happened, and that God has been with them every step of the way through. And so we can embrace his love for us. And ultimately, that is how we begin to let go of that shame. We choose not to allow it to be our identity. We choose not to let failure be the thing that defines us. But we choose to start seeing ourselves through the lens of his grace and the strength of his love. And that is big enough to cover any fault, any sin, and take us to a new place.
Again, the gospel is hitting a home run here. Like,
It does.
Some of the guys I talk to have such negative antagonistic church history that they refuse the gospel. And my argument with them is, you're talking about people and organizations. You're not talking about the gospel written in 1st century, 2nd century. You're talking about 2,000 years later.
Yeah.
Some foolishness is going on. This is so good, man. When's your books coming out? And just ask him. Okay, so if you've been listening today and this discussion struck a chord with you, contact us at Father Seekers. We want to connect with you. Email me at barry@fatherseekers.org. Also, you can engage with Father Fuel, a weekly download for you, no charge, that will help you in these areas to develop yourself. And I want to challenge you to begin to take a look at your emotional scarring, begin to identify it. This is Barry with Father Seekers, and this is the podcast, Teach Me to Father. Thank you, Pastor Kelly Rhodes.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.